Thank you very much there, Mr. Chris Kuta, for those key points that you are highlighting. Shows that to tackle a project of this magnitude, you need multiple stakeholders. After all, they bring different resources, different levels of knowledge that when you put it together, you come up with a much more robust solution, which links us to the issue of service delivery, driving service delivery. And we've got Ismail, who's going to give us a presentation regarding service delivery from Gauteng, Office of the Premier. Over to you, Ismail.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I'd like to thank Mr. Mbada and Mr. Kuta for their inputs. I think especially for Mr. Kuta and the partnership with the Canadian government, I think it's much appreciated. I think today's session is being hosted by Gauteng Province, and it's essentially a consultation. It's a consultation with our partner provinces to see if there is, to explore opportunities for us to learn from each other and to share lessons as the officers of the Premier. So I think that's going to be the focus of today. So if I can just quickly look at the session and some of the objectives. We're interested in sharing best practice and case studies and examples with other provinces. We'd like to reflect on how to improve provincial governance and coordination structures. We want to review various provincial approaches, and again, different provinces have done different things. We want to reflect on the lessons learned from COVID-19 response and its implications, and how we can use these lessons to address other challenges we face. We want to look at the commitment from provinces to participate in a quarterly network, so that we can maybe get the host province to kind of share their best practice and possibly even organize site visits once we're able to travel more freely. And we're interested in exploring support from GTAC, DPME, the NSG, and including our partners internationally, the Canadian government and other agencies. So yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do today. So maybe to start off, the Office of the Premier is kind of the apex of the center of government. And what I mean by center of government? So center of government at the provincial level. We've looked at this definition from the OECD, and I think it's quite important. So it says center of governments have traditionally been responsible for serving the head of government and cabinet. However, they are increasingly expected to combine their traditional role with a more active role in other functions such as policy development, coordination, implementation and monitoring mechanisms, which require a higher level of integration and coordination with other government departments and agencies. And I think our experience within COVID, and in particular, I suppose, other provinces as well, this latter component of the definition becomes quite real. That we had to coordinate, we had to integrate and work with across government departments and other agencies. And I think that's been the takeaway lesson from how we responded to COVID. So another kind of exploring this concept, if we look at the World Bank identifies 5 key roles for the center of government. Focusing political pressure for results through progress, chasing on behalf of the head of government. So exactly, the Office of the Premier occupies a unique position in that its political head is the head of the provincial administration. And we basically act on behalf of the head of government in such an instance. We need to provide a simple and direct monitoring mechanism for key government priorities. So we need to have the information that says, how are we doing at any given time in achieving our priorities and reaching the targets we set ourselves. Signaling key government delivery priorities within and outside of the public sector. So very importantly to say, what is the priorities of government, and to make that broadly known within government and society. Provide a clear signal that government is holding ministers and senior staff to account for delivering on government key priorities. So it's not enough to just announce your priorities. You need to have accounting and accountability mechanisms to assess progress and to ensure that those responsible are actually doing their job. And lastly, supporting innovation, coordination by various ministers and providing a forum for problem solving. And it's about bringing people together and addressing problems and challenges that we face. So just briefly on the lessons, and I think Mr. Mbada has spoken about this, and Kamal has also presented this yesterday. Responding to COVID has required government to operate differently. We're now used to working remotely. Government has led a process that involved all stakeholders to focus on saving lives and livelihoods. So there was a very focused priority that was forced upon us by COVID. Creation of work streams in some instances allowed for a focused approach and breaking down of silos between spheres, between departments and within departments. And I think the nature of government is that we all kind of go back to our silos and our comfort zones. But COVID has forced us to kind of work across those silos and to break those barriers. Lessons learned in our response should serve as a model for responding to current delivery challenges and future crises. So again, let's not waste this crisis. Let's see how we can learn from it and prepare for the next crisis or how we deal with other challenges. Just to continue, COVID has focused attention on addressing the impact of the pandemic that entailed many positive dimensions. So yeah, as I mentioned before, there was rigorous priority setting, use of external expertise, leadership, established routines, elimination of silos, problem solving and escalation, use of data and verification. And I think if we look at the conclusion of yesterday's session, Bangani and Galeza kind of spoke to all of this to show kind of the kind of themes that were emerging from all the provinces. So, and I think again, this process and the session we had yesterday, it's imperative for us to document this experience and to learn our lessons. So a more assertive, responsive role has been played by the center of government, departments during the lockdown period, and that includes the Office of the Premier, the Provincial Treasury, and COCTA. In Gauteng, we also have a Department of eGov that played a key role. So I think in today's session and the following session, Chair, when we hear from the GCRO, they're going to expand on this governance and leadership arrangement and from an external view, kind of, and assess how Gauteng has performed in this area of leadership and governance. So I think going into concluding fairly quickly, we've identified that the role of the center of government revolves around 6 key areas: oversight, verification, overall coordination, intervening, support, and communication. And that, we think, is what the Office of the Premier as the center of government should be focused on. So as the Gauteng, we've kind of looked at it and tried to define these roles amongst different departments at the center of government. So if we look at oversight, there's the monitoring and reporting on performance and delivery. There's addressing of institutional issues and capacities. Gauteng also responsible for many financial controls, and that's the role essentially of Provincial Treasury. And COCTA has a very important role of governance and institutional oversight of municipalities. So we've identified that as kind of a key role around oversight. If we look at verification, again, I think it's incumbent on the Office of the Premier not to just accept reports that come from blind departments. What we need to do is interrogate and verify data that's coming, that's been reported as progress. If we look at overall coordination, again, the positional advantage of the Office of the Premier allows us to bring in stakeholders and officials from relevant departments to kind of problem solve. Intervening. So where we identify poor performance or where departments are not meeting their targets, it's incumbent again for the Office of the Premier, working with other center of government departments to go in, support, unblock, and assist departments to resolve any challenges that they have in meeting their priorities. Support, again, we've got the Department of eGov, and it's their mandate to provide e-support to ensure that we have the digital services in place that the website is available, and that information is essentially available, and that the public can access it. And I think lastly, communication is quite important. And we need to communicate across departments, but also to broader society, to basically highlight what the priorities of the province is. So as I've mentioned, the GCRO will be presenting next, and they will be focusing on the role of the center of government and some of the governance and leadership role that we played during this pandemic. We've also then looking at a much more specific case study to look at how the Office of the Premier worked with essentially the Department of Health and our Department of Infrastructure Development to ensure that we had the necessary number of functional beds to accommodate the infection rate and people requiring medical services. And I think that's going to be a very important case study to look at. So if we look at the proposal we want to make around the provincial delivery network, we're interested to hear from provinces. How has your Office of the Premier functioned as the center of government? How do you strategize and identify priorities? What approaches do you use to drive in delivery? How do you monitor and verify what departments are telling you in their progress reports? How do you establish routines and problem solve and escalate when you have problems that require resolution at a political level or at a senior management level? So we're interested in discussing, if there is an appetite for this network, can we rotate hosting of this amongst different provinces? I think so different provinces can have an opportunity to host it and to showcase their own case studies. We're keen to discuss with our national counterparts, GTAC, DPME, the School of Government, if they can support such a network from a national level. And also to look at approaches we can look at to writing up case studies and site visits. Some ideas on the development of a network is to develop a portal where we can share information, case studies, tools, templates. And I think there's a big question around that we need to answer is if we agree on this network, how do we fund all of this? So I think the session that we're going to be doing later today, this afternoon, with Diresh, we're going to explore these questions and hopefully get more input from our partner provinces as to what their view is on participating in such a network. Chair, let me stop there. Thank you very much.